This is the most complete guide on the internet on how to become a software engineer from zero. The job market today is not easy. AI is rising, which is making it harder than ever to become a software engineer, because the more that AI can do, the more you will need to do as a human to compete against AI and basically to not be replaced by it. But you don't actually have to worry about any of these things, because if you just do all the things that I'm going to tell you in this video, you are still going to be able to become a software engineer from zero. What we will learn in this video is how to get started, because actually most people don't even get started properly. Like 90% of people will stop right here in step one because they don't know how to get started properly. Then how we will learn to code. You need to learn to code to become a software engineer. Then how to actually get good at coding, because a lot of people will start to learn to code and will think they're learning to code, but no matter how much they learn, they never actually get good at it. Some of you might be in this position right now. You might have been struggling for months, not making progress. Well, I'm going to tell you how to get past that very, very easily. Then how to become a God tier candidate so that you can actually stand out and get jobs at whatever company you want, paying 100K plus or more, or whatever is like above average salary in your country. And then there's a secret step at the end that we will get into. So what you want to do, you want to get a job at a big company like a Google, Meta, Amazon, paying a high salary, but where you are is here. You are confused, you don't even know what coding is, you've tried a bit of coding and you're just completely lost at what to do. So our goal today is to get you from here to here as fast as possible. So let's do that. So my story, just briefly, I used to have a career that I absolutely hated. I was doing sort of what I thought society wanted me to do, what everyone else around me was doing, which was getting into banking and consulting, because I had studied economics at university and everyone who studies economics tends to get into these careers. But I realized quickly that doing a career that you don't enjoy, that you're not fulfilled by, is not a life worth living, no matter how much money that career can potentially pay you. But I also understood that you do need to make money. I wouldn't want to work a job just because it's my passion or whatever if it can't get me to my financial goals. I also want to be financially free. But then I discovered coding, and I discovered that this was actually a career that I could enjoy. Maybe it wasn't my end goal to just work the 9-to-5 ladder of my entire life, but this could be a career that could get me started with making money and building a skill that could actually get me to my financial goals as well. And I actually ended up landing a job in just 4 months, and ever since on this channel I have been helping as many of you do the same. And this video right here is going to be the most complete guide on exactly how to do that today. I made a full video in the past. It's the most popular video on my channel where I go into detail on exactly my story on how I ended up doing this in 4 months. You can check that out down below if you want. Now, why do we want to do software engineering? Why is software engineering such a good career? Number one, coding is a skill of the future. I don't care how much people are saying like, oh, AI is coming and things like this. Sure, AI is coming and it's changing the industry, but still technology is the thing that is bringing humanity forward. Technology is the number one way we are solving problems in the world today. And the underlying fundamental skill around building any technology is going to be coding, because code is what technology is built on. So learning is just the most future-proof skill that you can have today. It is one of the most highest paid professions in the world still today. And to know that, all you have to do is look at some statistics. And the core thing with software engineering is that you can earn these high salaries without working 100-hour work weeks. My friends who do investment banking or law or consulting, they're working super insane hours. With software engineering, you can literally work 9 to 5 and earn 100K, 200K a year, which leaves you time to either one, spend time with your family, enjoy your life, or to build a side business or whatever. And it gives you a lot of freedom. Now, I don't think any 9-to-5 career is really going to give you total freedom. We'll talk about this later on in the video. But out of any 9-to-5 job in the world, if you want that stability of a job, you're going to have more freedom than any other job, because often you can work remotely. So if you want freedom, but you also still want to work a job, then software engineering is probably your best bet. Now, step one, how do we get started? Well, the first question you're going to have in your mind always is, what language should I pick? Well, the first way we can tackle this question is just to look at some statistics. Statistically speaking, the most in-demand languages are going to be JavaScript and Python. And TypeScript is sort of like just a version of JavaScript. We can look at how many people use it on GitHub. We can look at just the number of job postings all of these languages are going to have. I recommend you do your own research based on your own region, but the TLDR is that Python and JavaScript are going to be the top languages. So if you just want to pick a safe bet that's going to be easy to learn, great for beginners, and have a lot of demand, then Python and JavaScript are going to be great options. But the real answer, you want to know what the real answer is that it doesn't freaking matter. Because as you will learn, if you learn multiple programming languages, as you certainly will throughout your career, they're less like different languages like French or Chinese. They're more like different dialects of the same language. You can think of like Canadian French versus French or American English versus British English. This is like they have the same exact logic, the core structure of the language, just like slightly different syntax, like slightly different words we use. So really it doesn't matter that much, because once you learn one, you can very easily learn another one. In fact, I have a video where I show you how I learned Java in just 14 days. And the secret there is that I was able to do that very easily because I already knew another language before. So before we get started, we need to understand how programming works. Like what actually even is programming. What programming is at the end of the day is that you're just speaking to a computer. When we are learning programming, we're learning how to speak to a computer. That is at the end of the day what we're doing. And the problem we have is that, let's say we're communicating with two humans. You're speaking to a human like I'm speaking to you in English. You as a human, if you're watching this video, presumably you can understand English. You know the human language of English. You can understand my words. But the problem is that a computer cannot understand human language. If I just speak English to a computer, it's not going to know what to do, because a computer speaks binary. Binary is the language that the computer speaks. Now, binary, what this means is just zeros and ones. And we could go into a ton of detail on like how this works, why this is the way it is done, etc. But for now, just know that computers speak binary, which is zeros and ones. If you give it the right sequence of zeros and ones, it's going to do the thing that you want. Now, you could technically just speak binary directly to the computer and this would work. But this is quite cumbersome because it is quite difficult for us to remember all the correct sequences of zeros and ones to get the computer to do all the things that modern computers can do. So what we have come up with as a solution as humans is create something called a programming language that is somewhere in between like how computers speak and how us humans speak. And then what we have done is we have created something called compilers that essentially translate the programming language into binary so that we as humans can write a programming language. And programming language is something that we can feasibly learn as a human and then simply translate that into binary. So that is really at the end of the day what programming is. So how do we get good at programming? How do we learn to code? Well, the first step is just to learn the features of a programming language. So how to speak this programming language using the right structure and the right essentially like grammar. So using the right rules of the programming language to write it properly. And then step 2 will be to learn to use it fluently and correctly so that you can just instinctively know how to write code without having to like look up a bunch of things on Google and things like this. What are these features? What are these features of the programming language that we're going to need to learn? Well, here's a bit of a list. This is not like a comprehensive list. Here's just an example of the kinds of things that make up a programming language. First, we have the foundations that make up a programming language. We have variables, we have functions, we have loop, we have control flow, we have data types. So here's just an example of what these things could look like in practice in an actual code file. This is just essentially like rules of how the programming language works and how we can write code that is going to get a computer to do something. And there's a bunch of other topics here. There's object-oriented programming, functional programming, version control systems, databases, design patterns. So what learning to code really means is learning to use all of these different things and then learning to combine your programming language with different technologies and databases and all these tools that we use as software engineers to turn this code into properly functioning software. But now this can seem a bit overwhelming, right? So how do you actually learn these things? Well, the core thing here is that you don't actually want to focus on this overwhelming list of topics. This is a big mistake that beginners make. They just look at a list of topics to learn and they just like try to memorize a bunch of different things. They will learn, okay, this week I'm just going to learn object-oriented programming, then I'm going to learn functional programming. But at the end of the 2 weeks, they still don't actually know how to use either of those things. So the hack that I recommend you adopt, which I adopted, that was like a game changer for me, is not to focus on that list, is to actually focus on just being able to code full projects from scratch. What you're actually trying to do is not memorize a bunch of topics, is to actually learn to use these things in practical projects. You shouldn't be trying to memorize anything, really. You should just be trying to think, okay, how can I use this in the real world? You should be having some project in your mind, and we'll talk about later on exactly how to do this and everything. And then whenever you're building these projects, you should be trying to apply these new things that you're learning as much as possible. So your goal isn't to learn a bunch of topics. Your goal is to build real projects. And for now, just keep that in mind. Later on in this video, we'll talk about exactly how to do that. So then, how do we learn to code? Well, there are two ways to do that. There's the DIY, the do-it-yourself path that is going to be free, where you're just going to be using a bunch of resources on the internet and combining them in such ways that you learn all these different things. The downside is that it takes very long because you have to figure these things out yourself. You don't really know what you should learn and things like this. So it's going to take a lot of trial and error, and you might end up stuck a lot more. Now, the other path is the guided path, where you follow a paid program. So that's the downside. It's going to be a paid path because someone has gone through the effort of putting together an entire course that teaches everything in one place. So of course, they're going to charge money for it. The upside is that it takes much less time, so you can get to the point where you can get a job and start making money a lot earlier. So really, at the end of the day, you're just investing money into this faster way of doing things so that hopefully you can make money sooner. So if you're completely broke, you don't have any money, or if you're just not willing to invest in yourself, in your career, the DIY path is a great way. If, however, you are willing to invest in yourself, then the resource that I recommend is called Course Careers. It is taught by complete industry experts who have done the thing that you want to do, which is to become a software engineer. You will go through essentially the foundations first, and then you can choose a specialization based on the kind of software engineer you want to become. But the thing is, as a beginner, you will probably get stuck many times throughout your journey. So they also have a community for you where you can speak to these instructors of the program directly and ask any of the questions. Like, if you're stuck with centering a div, then you can just ask the instructor directly on what you are doing wrong. And you also get access to mentors who are working the jobs that you want to work as a software engineer. So you can ask them the literal exact questions that you have about this career. Like, for example, what is the food like at the Google office, or whatever you want to ask. But what Course Careers does is it also helps you get a job directly, because essentially Course Careers, they've also formed connections directly with companies who want to hire software engineers. And what they've done is just told these companies like, hey, we've got a bunch of people here who have gone through our curriculum. This is the curriculum. They have a certificate that they've gone through it. Would you like to interview them? And the company is like, well, hell yeah, I'd rather do that than go through like 1,000 resumes from our online application portal. This is, for example, how Max got a job directly via Course Careers in just 3 or 4 months without applying for a single job. So if you're interested in Course Careers and you want to choose this path, then what they have is a free introductory course that's going to give you an introduction into software development. I recommend you at least take that free course down below in the description, and then you can choose what's right for you. Thank you for Course Careers for partnering with me to make this video. And now let's move on to the next step, which is going to be where we actually get good at coding. And that step is going to be to just write code for 1,000 hours. Now, I don't know if it's actually 1,000 hours or whatever number. The point is, you need to write a lot of code. And how do we do that? Well, what you need to do is pick a project you are interested in, like some actual piece of software that you actually want to build. Like, for example, my first real project was like an international tax calculator, because I was quite interested in comparing tax rates in different countries. So I just coded an app that automatically calculates me the net salary from any given gross salary for a bunch of different countries. That was a project that I was interested in, and because I was interested in, that kept me motivated to keep going with the project. And through building this project, that is actually when I internalize all these topics that I had been learning in the course that I had been doing. The way this is going to work is that you're not going to know how to do it from scratch. Like, it's not like after you learn a bit of coding, you're just magically going to know exactly how to build everything. To this day, whenever I start to build a new project, which is like every few weeks, I have no idea how to build it when I'm just starting. But the way coding really works is that you're just using Google and you're using ChatGPT to figure out every step of the process, and you're going to see a lot of errors. It's going to be frustrating, but eventually, if you just keep banging your head against the wall and you keep going, you're going to be able to keep building it. And you will notice that through building this project, that is actually when you learn. That is actually when you become fluent in coding. That is actually when you learn how to use coding without really thinking about it. And if you want to learn my exact process on how I code projects from scratch, I made a full guide, a full video on that, which is also going to be linked down below in the description. And then what you're going to do is just repeat steps 1 and 2 until you have built a couple of really complex and impressive projects, because it is after that you're going to actually have confidence in your skills as a developer. You're going to actually feel like you actually know how to code. And that is the point when you're actually ready to start applying for jobs. And that is going to be step 4, to become a God tier candidate. How do we do that? Well, really what we need to do is just look at what do companies want, and then what we need to do is just become that person. So who is this person? They're looking for broadly 3 things. They're looking for competence. So just in general, are you a competent person? Just basically don't be a complete fuck up. They're looking for enough technical skills, and we'll talk about in a second how you can show this to people, how you can prove to them that you actually know how to code. And they're looking for the right attitude. And this is probably the most important thing. You'll be surprised, especially in the Western world, because our lives have been so easy and we've lived in this abundance, just how bad people's attitudes are. People are like, oh, I'm not going to work for this poor salary. Like, I deserve more. I shouldn't have to work hard. Like, people have these crazy attitudes. And that is just not what companies want. They want the kind of people who are willing to work hard and they're willing to learn. Because as a beginner, even if you do all of this correctly, you're not going to be that good, like compared to the people who are already working in this company. So if you come with this attitude like, oh, I shouldn't have to work, like they're just not going to like you. But just have these 3 things and you're going to have a good chance. So how do we show that to companies? Obviously, they don't know you. They can't possibly know whether you can code, things like this. Well, the way you do that is in resume, which will actually get you interviews. And then in the interviews, you need to show up in the right way, put yourself across in the right way to show that you have these things. So how do we do that? First of all, a resume. And I made a full video in the past about how to make a resume, what are the things that you need to put in it. But basically, the resume should look more like this on the right and less like this on the right. Can you spot a few things that are wrong here on the left? Well, first of all, the formatting is terrible. You can see that some of these bullet points are completely off the formatting. It doesn't have a lot of white space. Well, this isn't the worst in the world, technically. I've seen some pretty bad resumes, by the way. This isn't the worst, but like you want to have a resume that has more white space, that just looks good to look at, that doesn't look claustrophobic. And you can't quite see here, but the last thing is to use action verbs. So let's say you're talking about a previous internship you had. You don't want to say like, oh, I was responsible for building spreadsheets or whatever, because they don't want to know what you were responsible for. They want to know what you actually did. How did you provide value to the company? So you're going to say, I built 100 spreadsheets in a week, which resulted in whatever benefit. So there's a lot more details to this. You want to talk about the tangible benefits that you will be able to provide to your company or whatever you were doing. And you want to make sure that it is relevant. So if you don't have a degree or any technical experience, you just want to focus on as much as possible on the projects that you have built. And this is the second benefit of building projects. It gives you relevant stuff to talk about in your resume. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't have real work experience as a software developer, if you have built complex software projects, then you essentially have experience as a software developer. You have just given yourself experience. And if you can just talk about it in this kind of way, you can show that you have built real software from scratch. That is going to be experience and they are going to take this seriously. And with that said, how do we get interviews? Well, if you make your resume in the right way, that is going to show to them that you are a competent person and that you have the right technical skills. But still, if you just apply online and you throw your resume to a bunch of companies, your resumes are just going to get lost in the sea of all the applications. A much better way is to use LinkedIn. So actually find recruiters who work for these companies on LinkedIn and reach out to them, or find employees like actual software engineers who work for the companies you want to work in and reach out to them. Get a coffee chat or something. You'd be surprised how willing people are to help. Now, the best way is going to be connections. If you have any connections at any tech companies, this is going to be the best way to get a job. Chances are you're not going to have this, but if you have any connections that you can use, this is going to be the absolute best way. Abuse them as much as possible. So how do we pass the interviews then? If you get an interview, well, what you want to show is number one, confidence, which comes from competence. So if you just build a bunch of projects, you actually believe, genuinely believe that you are good at coding, that is going to show. If you actually believe that you can do a good job at the company, that you are a competent individual, this is going to come across in your confidence. When I build rapport with the interviewer, at the end of the day, the interviewer is a human that has an ego, and human psychology works on them just like on everyone else. So you just want to build human rapport with them, because this also shows that you are a nice actual human that they would probably want to work with. And then you want to show them that you actually want to do the job. You want to make sure that you're actually interested. You want to learn about the company, what they do, you care about their mission, even if you actually don't. Just make them think that you do, even if you actually don't. And then you need to probably learn a topic called data structures and algorithms. Why do you need to learn this? Well, a lot of companies, especially the big 10 companies, are going to have interview problems that are based on these topics called data structures and algorithms. I have a full video on exactly how to learn data structure and algorithms. If you're interested in doing that, I'll leave that down below in the description. With that said, now, if you just do all that, then you're going to have a 100K plus job at your dream company. Easy, right? Well, obviously it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of struggle. So I recommend that you just enjoy the process as much as possible. But if you just keep doing it, maybe it takes longer, maybe it takes less time. Also depends on luck. Eventually you are going to get there. But there's one more step left, which is to quit, because you're going to realize that the 9-to-5 life really sucks and it's really not all that it's made out to be. And you're going to realize that in the Western world, taxes take most of your money anyway. And if you live in San Francisco, New York, your cost of living is so high that even with this high salary, you aren't saving as much as you think. So then you're going to quit to work remotely or to do your own thing and get super rich as an annoying digital nomad roaming the world, just like me. And if you want to learn how to do that, you can watch this video right here where I talk about why I quit software engineering to become a digital nomad and what my experience is and also the downsides. So watch this video next and I'll see you in the next one.